Well, we're live now, so let me just welcome everybody and say, hey, thanks for coming to this session. We've got a great session for you this evening, and I'm just going to try and share my screen, which you should be able to see right now, and tell you that this is the session you're about to join, VR and AR, a reality check by a great presenter on this topic, Jeremy Dalton. My name is Dalton. I'm chairman of North London branch and Central London branch at BCS. And this session promises to be a really good one. But I want to introduce you first of all to a couple of colleagues of mine who are also here. David Grundy, who is the secretary of Central London branch and is going to do the topping and tailing of the video resulting from this session. So you'll be able to catch up with a video later as well. And also we've got Joachim Grant, who is facilitating in the background as well. So we're all here for you, but also here for you is Jeremy, our great presenter. Now, I just want to share something about Jeremy first before we start, just a very brief intro from me. And Jeremy Dalton has been at the very forefront of immersive technologies over the past decade. And he's a global thought leader on its potential impact on our society. Now, he's written this book, Reality Check, that you can see on screen, and this encompasses his deep knowledge, says the review that I'm reading here. This book encompasses his deep knowledge, personal, unique thoughts and insights, and extensive experience to contextualize the potential benefits of XR for business. Now that's written by a reviewer, but I've known Jeremy in a little way for a long time, and I can fully echo those thoughts. And he has been the head of XR at PwC, located here in London, for quite a while. But I'd just like to say one more thing before I hand over to Jeremy, which is you too can play a part in this by entering any questions into the Q&A or chat. And David and I will pick those up and make sure that Jeremy gets those questions, which he can address probably after his presentation or else as he wishes during his presentation. We have got lots of good things for you. This is tonight's event, but look what we've got coming up for you. I've got two other snapshots to share with you. So the next one I want to just share with you is this. This is on the 21st of April, something very different, Womenspiration, an inspiring woman talking to everybody, whether male or female, in a fireside chat. This time we've got the Harvey Nash Group CEO, Bev White. And Bev has been in technology for a long time. And as she says there, we all have IT in us. A career in technology is one of the most amazing, rewarding careers anyone can have. You can literally change the world. Wow. Well, come along and see this fireside chat of Bev being interviewed and giving her thoughts on this topic on the 21st of April. After that, we've got another one, which is IT Heads 2021 by somebody who is the CEO of his own company relating to security and especially cybersecurity. That's Richard Hollis, and his session is entitled 5 Epic Fails of the Cybersecurity Industry. Oh my God, what's that going to reveal? Well, come along and find out. So that's what we've got coming up. And I think David actually has yet another one. We're really cramming in the webinars for you to get maximum value from our lockdown period. David has one also for the 14th of April, but I didn't manage to capture the details of that just before the webinar. So we may hear about that later. And of course, look out for emails, look out for the website entries to do with all of these. Well, you probably found the details of this session either on LinkedIn or on the website or on emails. However you find it, Well done. This is going to be a great session, and I'd like to now hand over to our great presenter, Jeremy Dalton. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you so much, Dalton, and hello everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the BCS for having me. It's an absolute delight to be able to speak to you today about this wonderful topic. At least I find it pretty wonderful and interesting. Interesting enough to basically go all in terms of my career on the technology. I wasn't always involved in VR and AR. It's been around for a while. Despite what many may think, virtual reality in its initial sort of technology state and has been around since the 1960s. It went through a period in the early 90s that some of you may remember, and those may not be the best memories. So I'll try not to dredge them up too much. But the landscape has changed massively since then, and this next era of virtual reality has proven to be quite special and quite impactful. And it's no longer just anecdotal evidence to sort of back that up, but there is a lot of analysis, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of case studies from organizations all over the world that speak to the value of this technology and how it can provide value to businesses in these different industries. So that's what I want to speak to you about today. I want to try and outline what exactly is this technology. There are lots of different terms flying about the place. What can it do? Where can it be used? And obviously we don't have a lot of time, and I don't want to be speaking at you for an entire hour. So I would encourage you to send in questions as you see fit at any point in the presentation. I'm more than happy to pick them up as I go along. Equally, if it's related to a different part of the presentation, I might hold it until then. But that shouldn't stop you from asking the question. So definitely feel free. I don't mind being interrupted at all. Not an issue. Really enjoy the engagement from everyone here. So yeah, don't feel shy about it. I think the best thing to start with, though, is to bring up a poll. David, I'm not sure if we can bring that up now. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. This is a poll to understand everybody's sense of virtual reality. So have you had a virtual reality experience before? And if so, what type of system did you use? If you used multiple systems, then just choose the one that you used most often. And I can see the poll results are coming in. We've already got almost half or more. We're past halfway now in terms of people voting, getting some very interesting results. This is really, really good information to see. So this helps me set up actually the rest of the presentation in terms of what sort of level I should be pitching out, what sort of information I'll be discussing and how I'll be describing it. So we're nearly at the end now. We've got 82% of people voted. Last few votes coming in. We'll give it a few more seconds. You should see the poll in front of you on your screen, and you'll be able to click on an option before clicking submit, and we'll be able to see it. So we've got nearly 90% of people who have voted right now. And David, correct me if I'm wrong, but can people see the results live as they're coming up?
In a moment. Shall I end it now?
Yeah, let's end it now, and let's show everyone the results.
Share results.
So there we go. 73 people have voted, and interestingly, quite a few people have tried different aspects of virtual reality. So we've had fairly equal split actually amongst the three main types of virtual reality systems. So you've got systems that use a mobile phone, so kind of like a Google Cardboard. In fact, I've got some props here. I'll go grab one for you. So we've got systems like this, which is it's a Google Cardboard. It is, as the name suggests, a piece of cardboard in which you unfold it like this and basically shove your mobile phone inside. Once you close it, you've got a sort of mini virtual reality viewer that you can use to experience budget virtual reality at the cost of merely a few dollars. Moving a bit up from that, you've got headsets like this, which are actually proving to be one of the most popular genres or types of virtual reality headsets. So this is an Oculus Quest 2, and it is made by Facebook is the parent company of Oculus. And Oculus has an interesting story behind it. Oculus actually started as a lot of startups do, one-man operation, a chap called Palmer Luckey, who was really passionate about the space, and he put a prototype of his original Oculus Rift on Kickstarter for $200 and asked for $240,000. And that was back in 2012. And after a month of being on Kickstarter, the amount of money that they had raised was $2.5 million. So an incredible amount of money for, if you go back to 2012, nobody cared about virtual reality. I mean, it was very much a niche product. And to some extent, even judging by the poll results today, it's somewhat of a niche technology still, in the sense that it hasn't quite reached mainstream adoption. But I'll show you some data relating to that, and you might be surprised at the results there. But yeah, so that's the Oculus Quest, the sort of latest iteration of what's now called standalone headsets, and they're called standalone because they don't have a wire or a connection to any other system like a computer or a console. Some of you who voted for the next batch of headsets, so a headset connected to a computer or console, you may recognize this headset here, the PlayStation VR. This was a very popular headset in the market. It helped to drive a lot of interest in the technology, and it's part of a type of headset called the tethered headsets, and they require a connection to a computer or console to run. Those are still in the market, but they are very much becoming a niche technology within a niche. So the popularity very much remains with standalone headsets, and standalone headsets are what are driving a lot of adoption of virtual reality in the consumer market as well as the enterprise market. So I see Lisa mentions that she loves her Quest 2. That is this headset here. It's a very good device. Facebook definitely has come under fire recently for privacy and data protection type issues and data collection type policies. But irrespective of that, they've certainly produced, from a user experience perspective, a very pleasant device to use, a very powerful device to use, and a relatively inexpensive device as well. So the Oculus Quest 2 is actually selling for £299 now at its base level, which is probably subsidized by their data collection policy. So yeah, thank you very much for answering the poll and for listening to a little bit of a spiel on virtual reality. Believe me, the history goes far further back than this. It's, if you really, really wanted to press virtual reality hard, you could take virtual reality back to the 1800s, where there were panoramic paintings, floor to ceiling, 10, 20 meters across. And it was very much the same idea. Even with stereoscopes, if anyone still has in their attic a Victorian era stereoscope, they look very much like a Google Cardboard device, except they're made out of wood. I don't happen to have one here with me, but you can find them on eBay. They're still going around all over the place for anywhere between £50 to £100 and £1,000 plus for some really old models. But same concept: two lenses, put it against your face, and instead of a computer screen in front of you, you've got a physical card with two images, one which goes to each eye, and that is called stereoscopy. And that technology is very much the same technology that's being used in these devices nowadays, except we're not looking at a static card anymore. We're looking at a dynamic digital computer screen. which is pretty amazing. So, the concept of virtual reality and being able to place yourself in a completely different environment or world, that concept has been around for hundreds, if not, thousands of years, if you want to bring it back to storytelling. But we won't go as far back as that. Today, we will bring it back to the present. We'll talk about the here and now, and hopefully you'll get some interesting information out of it. So I'm going to share my screen now. Hopefully you can all see that. So let's talk about definitions first of all. You may have heard a lot of different types of definitions out there when it comes to virtual reality and augmented reality. I mean, apart from VR and AR, there is extended reality, XR, mixed reality, MR. From an academic perspective, augmented virtuality. Intel at one point was pushing merged reality, and it all got very confusing. And to a large extent, it's still very confusing. But the best way to think about this is you've got two main types of technology on this spectrum, because the important thing to remember is that virtual reality and augmented reality are not these point technologies. They don't, it's very difficult to say, this is the exact definition of virtual reality and that covers all eventualities. This is the exact definition of augmented reality and it covers all eventualities. But we will try anyway. Virtual reality on one side is all about encapsulating you in a completely different environment, world, time, set of circumstances. It is where the digital world, the world around you is purely digital. Augmented reality, on the other hand, is where you are still in the real world. So you're in the room that you're in now, your bedroom, your office, hopefully not your office, given the time at the moment. But you are getting digital elements overlaid on top of that real world. So it could be a PDF, something simple like a PDF right in front of your view that you can quickly refer to as you're performing a procedure on a vehicle, for example, that you need to refer to the instructions for. It could be these are all real examples that are available. It could be a set of navigation instructions and arrows on the road in front of you, telling you how to get to your destination in a more visual way that connects to the real world environment in front of you. There are many different aspects of these technologies. There are many different ways of creating virtual reality and augmented reality experiences. But the first thing I'd say is that XR, which is an umbrella term for virtual reality and augmented reality, and this is the only other term I'll use in this presentation. XR is not just about headsets. So stereotypically, we tend to think of virtual reality and augmented reality as something that we experience with a head-mounted display or a headset or a set of goggles or glasses or whatever you want to call them. But that's not totally true. If you look at these three pictures, one of them represents a cave, one of them a smartphone, and one is simply a large screen. Now, a cave is an interesting system. It's basically a projection technology whereby the walls around you are being projected onto, and sometimes the floor and ceiling as well. And you have a pair of sort of regular glasses. You can see through them. They're transparent with some markers on them that help the computer system to understand how are you moving in 3 dimensions in that scene. And as you move your head, as you go left to right, backward, forward, the projectors will change the scene to match what you expect from your perspective. So for example, if there was a pillar being projected in front of me, I could step a few steps to the left and I'd be able to see round that pillar on the projected screen. So it's obviously not, technically 3-dimensional, but the effect and the impact that you get is one of 3 dimensions. It does make you feel like you're in a totally 3-dimensional world. And that type of effect is what's used even with headsets as well. When it comes to smartphones, now they were previously used in headsets like the Google Cardboard, like the Samsung Gear VR, which I also have here. One second. So this is the Samsung Gear VR here, and this headset actually held a phone. I don't know if you can see the connector there. It's right there, but basically you would have I think it was I can't remember now, probably a Note 7, something like that. And there were a few other phones that worked in different versions of it, but you would basically slot the phone in there and it would latch onto it and keep it in front of the two lenses, allowing you to put on the headset and experience a slightly higher fidelity or level up from the cardboard systems that are still available, and both of these systems are still available nowadays. But that was the way that phones started to help in virtual reality systems. Phones, however, are primarily nowadays being used in augmented reality, because not everyone wants to use their phone and kill the battery within, half an hour to 1 hour by shoving it in a virtual reality headset and have no access to it while, you're using the experience. And then there's the overheating issues. And then there's the fact that phones were never optimized for virtual reality in the first place. There's a whole plethora of issues behind that, which is why we've moved to more tethered systems and more standalone systems like we have here. But from an augmented reality perspective, the amazing thing about these phones is that it's very likely that what you have in your pocket now is capable of doing some pretty decent virtual reality. And I'm going to go a little bit off-piste here, but if anyone wants to scan that QR code with their mobile phone, this is probably going to fail miserably. I'm warning you now. But if you'd like to experience what is quite cutting edge augmented reality and see if your phone's capable of doing that, get the camera out on your smartphone, or if you're on an Android phone and it doesn't have an inbuilt QR code scanner on the camera, if you've got a QR code scanner app, go to that. Alternatively, what I will do is I will give you the link anyway to type in your screen. What you will get by going to this URL, which will happen after scanning the QR code, is you'll get an augmented reality experience that actually connects to the real world environment around you. So struggling with one. Yeah, there we go. So this 3D model is actually a real human being that's been volumetrically captured, right? And to explain that, volumetric capture is a very new form of recreating physical elements as digital elements. So taking elements from the real world and digitizing them. So this is a real person. It hasn't been created, it's not computer generated graphics, on a game engine like Unity or anything like that. But the idea behind this link, if you get it working on your phone, you can actually place this guitarist in your real world environment. And I don't just mean, it's going to be a picture in front of your phone and you're going to be able to move it around. I mean, literally place the person on your floor using just the sensors of your camera. Or for those of you who are the lucky ones among us, not me, if you have a newer iPhone or an iPad Pro, you'll have a LiDAR system as well, which will help with these elements. But that's really cutting edge stuff. And if you're able to do that, and I noticed that it looks like Lisa and Abdur have been successful with that. Let me know if you've managed it or not. Sam, yep, Sam's got it. Michelle's got it. Excellent, excellent. So yeah, it's just quite a magical experience, but it's not just for entertainment purposes. This is just an illustration. And we've had we're getting people placing our guitarist all over the place. That's fantastic. That's really great. But yeah, feel free to mess around with that. I've provided a link on the chat window if you'd like to. That just gives you an example of how powerful the technology in our pocket has become these days. It's absolutely amazing. And if you think that there are over 1 billion people in the world that are capable of producing or capable of having a significant augmented reality experience, that opens up the market quite significantly to building a lot of the applications. And I'll speak a little bit about those later on. You can take it, Roberto, you're asking about the QR code. You can absolutely take a picture of it, but what I would recommend is just use the link. So demo.senseofspace.io. And if you want to bring up the QR code on your screen, you can simply click the little AR button at the bottom there, and that will bring up the QR code there. And yeah, you can experience it anytime. So jumping back into our presentation now. We talked a little bit about different types of devices that virtual reality and augmented reality can appear on. We left one out of this particular slide, and that's the one on the right. Now, the cave system on the left-hand side, the projection system, that actually is a picture taken at the University of Leeds. So they've got a very powerful cave type system going on there, and they use that for all sorts of academic experiments. In this particular case, they are conducting experiments on pedestrian traffic interactions. So in other words, making people feel like they are walking across a road or they're walking across a pedestrian path, and being able to modify all those factors, but without having to actually take up a road, disrupt a lane, or put anyone in danger, let's say, because it can all be done digitally and still give you that feeling that you are crossing this digital road environment. The picture on the right-hand side, this is actually a picture from GlaxoSmithKline and their Science Shopper Lab in Brentford in West London. Now, I've been over there a few times. There are some fantastic people working there. If anyone's in touch with GSK, get in touch with a guy called Gregory Hoff. He does a lot of virtual reality work for GSK in that lab. And this is an example of how they are using what is effectively a very large screen to make people feel like they're in a digital environment. So you may think, well, I mean, does that really work? You just make a screen large and, you know, people feel like they're part of the virtual worlds. Well, it does. They use this screen to make people feel like they are in the middle of a pharmacy, and they are able to walk in that environment, not physically. They'll have to navigate using a gamepad or using the touch screen controls. But the idea is to understand their behaviors in that environment, to better to provide analytics behind the merchandising of the products. So, for example, if people are not noticing, you know, a certain brand of, a majority of people are not noticing a certain brand of toothpaste because it's set too low, then they can make recommendations. You know, if this is on sale and you want it to be taken up by consumers, it should be in this aisle at that row. If people are finding the layouts confusing, those can be digitally manipulated, you know, in seconds or minutes, and you can have people run through them again, optimize the layouts, and then provide those recommendations to pharmacies. It's obviously not limited to pharmacies. It could be applied to retail. It could be applied to any environment that is complicated, that requires a display of products or requires users to navigate through. But there are some real world examples for you right there on how this technology is being used. Now, important thing, you probably will have noticed this by now, but I'm going to bring it up anyway, because this is kind of the precipice of the entire, or the foundation of the entire discussion here. And actually, the main motivation for me writing Reality Check, this book that you see there, very, very strategically placed behind me. The reason I wrote Reality Check, or one of the main reasons, is that every time I was talking to businesses and business leaders about this technology, there was a general feeling out there that it didn't really relate to business. It was for fun. It was for entertainment. It was for video gaming. And you know, it's annoying to hear, frustrating when you're trying to push the commercial benefits of it. But you can understand why that is. When you look at all of the the news or the media that gets pushed out there relating to virtual reality or augmented reality, it tends to come from the entertainment and gaming space, because that's the most exciting space, or let's say it's the most interesting for consumers to check out. And there are some fun stories. And when Brie Larson gets on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and starts playing Beat Saber, or someone nearly walks off a cliff playing Pokemon Go, fantastic stories for the media. People eat that up, and they really it invokes a lot of shock, it invokes a lot of fun, and there's just not as much shock or fun when it comes to the business use cases. The poor commercial world, nobody really cares if DHL manages to get a 15% improvement on its warehouse sort of analysis of products and logistics, if they're using a virtual augmented reality head-mounted display. Not particularly exciting. It's not going to make headlines. However, there are incredible results and case studies out there relating to the technology. To try and bring this all together, and it's a little bit difficult because there are so many applications of this technology commercially, but to try and bring it all together, we worked with our economics team here in London, and we tried to answer the question, what impact is this technology going to have on the world economy? And what we found through doing a lot of very complicated modeling, and I can go through the methodology if you'd like, but I'd probably have to bring the economics team on board and we have to have another hour session on it. But in summary, what we did is we took a lot of the current use cases, a lot of the current benefits of XR technology in the industries where we were seeing those benefits being accrued, and then extrapolated them, bearing in mind all the relationships between the current economies of the world and also their trading relationships, and worked with a global trade analysis project database to piece it all together. And what we found was quite incredible, that we expect XR technologies could boost GDP globally by up to $1.5 trillion by 2030. Now, if you want to see the full detail around it and you want to play with some of the countries, you can actually check that out here. There's a little data explorer. You can download the report for free. You don't have to put in your email address or anything like that. It's pwc.com/seeingasbelieving. And I shall shove the URL in here. There you go. But yeah, you've got a little data map here, which allows you to change the years, which allows you to change the countries if you want to analyze it by certain countries, the currencies, and of course, the use cases here, which I will come on to next. So that was an exciting result for us, and an exciting result for the XR industry in general. And the idea behind it is that there are so many ways that this technology can impact the world of business. And we collated them into these 5 buckets. Now, this is just one way of cutting the applications, but there are many different ways. You can cut them by industry, you can cut them by technology, you can cut them by device to some extent. But this kind of made sense for what we were doing, and we could connect a lot of the data points to some of these elements. But in summary, the largest area where we saw XR helping the global economy is through product and service development. And what we mean by that is it aids in the creating of new products and services. It aids in collaboration between teams, so organizational meetings, the design of physical assets, vehicles, buildings. It could be industrial manufacturing tools, anything like that. And you may be interested to know this actually, but it's not just a sort of future pipe dream where we all, around the world put on a headset and get together in virtual reality. We are running virtual reality meetings every week with different stakeholders from all over the world, both with clients and internally at PwC with different teams. So right now we're in the middle of a project which will involve bringing 250 people from all over the world together in virtual reality. So using headsets just like this. And that's really exciting for us, and that's just one of many projects that are ongoing at the moment. From a healthcare perspective, there's a lot of applications here. Virtual reality is being used to manage and treat trauma in the past. PTSD is used to manage symptoms of dementia through exposure therapy. I think I've got the right term there. Someone correct me if not. But the idea behind this is that if you take a dementia patient back to the past, a time in their childhood or in their younger years that they recall, it helps to ground them in the reality of the here and now. And it's very difficult to do that physically, because imagine trying to build, a 1950s street in the real world. Incredibly expensive venture, incredibly time consuming. But when you can build that environment digitally, that can be distributed all over the world because it's simply software, and it can also be experienced in a very immersive way that makes you feel like you're part of that environment. Virtual reality is being used to train doctors. Augmented reality is being used to place scans, 3D scans of patients against their real body, so you can have more accurate ideas of where the incision points should be. It is being used to help surgeons warm up for training. It's helping to train junior surgeons on procedures, from everything from knee surgeries to everything you can imagine. The reason I bring up knee surgery is because I actually got to experience one of these training scenarios, which included not only the virtual reality headset, but also the needle itself. And every time you would press the needle against the virtual patient's bone, skin, or muscle, you would get different feedback on your hand accordingly. And everything took place in a virtual environment, virtual operating room. When it comes to development and training, we touched a little bit upon it in the healthcare space, but it is just a fantastic tool when it comes to soft skills and hard skills in particular. So virtual reality, with its ability to immerse you in a completely different environment, is fantastic for making you feel like you are in front of an audience of 1,000 people practicing a public speech, when you are in front of a difficult customer having a negotiation about one of your company's latest products. When you are a telecommunications engineer that needs to climb a tower that is on top of a roof, which is on top of a high-rise building, and helping you to manage potential feelings of vertigo and fear as you are up there with the wind blowing past you, trying to make sure all this equipment is being appropriately maintained and hooked on and all the rest of it. Process improvements. This is an interesting space. You can think of process improvements mainly from an augmented reality perspective. I haven't actually shown you an augmented reality headset. Let's see if we've got one here. This device here is an augmented reality headset. Notice that it has a transparent pane of glass on the front of it, which allows you to see through it effectively. And hence why you get the augmented reality effect. And this is a device by Microsoft, the Microsoft HoloLens 2. Quite an incredible device. It basically allows you to place real-world objects in situ with the environment around you. So these sensors at the top here actually scan the real world in front of you, so it knows where all your floors are, your walls, your ceiling, all the surfaces. It conducts that type of scanning. And therefore, once it has that information, it can place, a full-size vehicle in your driveway, or a full-size, table that you're planning to buy in your living room. For those scenarios, actually, for the table scenario, you could even use your mobile phone, to be honest. IKEA has an app for that, believe it or not, that allows you to do that using augmented reality. But yeah, there are so many different areas of usage for the technology. And the final place, the more obvious ones, maybe you've heard of a lot of these experiences. This is to do with the retail and consumer space. augmented reality and virtual reality being used to help consumers understand more about the products that they're buying by bringing them into the real world, helping them to try on shoes, necklaces, accessories, watches, sunglasses, helping them to try on clothing, put, you know, a real life-size handbag on your table, put a laptop or a printer or a coffee machine. And I'll come on to a few more of those examples and bring them to life, but that covers that last area there. I'm just going to pause for a second because I know we're getting a few questions on here, which is great. Let's see what we got. Trying to open the Q&A panel. Doesn't seem to want to play ball with me. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, there we go. So we've got an attendee asking the question, how does this differ from a hologram? So the term hologram is actually a bit of a misnomer. It's been very much incorrectly used. But if I'm assuming that the way most people think about a hologram is a pseudo three-dimensional sort of object that appears to be in the real world, then there are different technologies for achieving that. So one of them is by using there are many of them. There's one called Pepper's Ghost. There's one which uses mirrors to project a person that is in another location, seemingly onto an environment in front of you. I would say the best way to think about this is that they are all achieving the same purpose. They're trying to get you to believe or to perceive that there is actually a 3D model or object in front of you. But they achieve this in different ways. The way that the HoloLens achieves this, and I'm really dumbing down the physics here, so I apologize to anyone who's massively in the optics space. But the idea here is there's obviously no screen here, right? It's a fully transparent pane of glass that we're looking through. And what we need to do, there are these very small projectors, but they're not in front of you. Otherwise, you'd be able to see them. But instead, they're around the sides of the headset. And using what's called a waveguide, which is a piece of glass that transmits light and brings it round to another location, they use waveguides to transmit the information that's coming from the little mini projector to get it to come round and straight into your eye, so you perceive it as coming from directly in front of you, when in fact it's coming originally from the side or behind you. So really, really clever optics and physics that they use on these augmented reality displays. When it comes to the virtual reality headset, you may be interested to know that, first of all, I talked about stereoscopy, the idea that you get, there's a screen behind these two lenses, and it's giving you a different picture in each eye, or it's sending a picture to each of your eyes, and your brain is putting them together, and you're getting the perception that you're seeing something three-dimensional. Now, you can actually achieve augmented reality using a virtual reality headset like this, which is opaque, right? There's no glass in front of it. There's nothing transparent. The clever way that these systems achieve that is through the cameras on the front of the headset. So probably have a look at this. This is a Vive Focus Plus here. And notice it's got these cameras here, right? So what happens is if you transmit the picture of the camera, so in other words, what it's seeing in front of you to you in the screen, then you feel like you're in your room, even though you've got an opaque headset right in front of you. Now, if the computer has the information about what's in front of you in the real world, before it gets to your eye through the screen, you can actually superimpose digital information on top of that picture of the real world. And that's how you get what's called pass-through augmented reality, which is achievable on these opaque virtual reality head-mounted displays. So that was a very long-winded answer, but hopefully it gives you some idea about the technologies behind this. Roki is asking, is there any link or interdisciplinarity between computer vision and virtual augmented reality? Absolutely. There is a massive, massive link between computer vision and XR technologies. And it's incredibly important link. And without it, these technologies wouldn't be possible, at least in their higher fidelity forms, I should say. So for those of you who don't know, and apologies, you probably all do know this, and I'm dumbing this down massively, but computer vision technology is in basic terms, the study or the science behind how computers see the real world and how we can get them to understand the real world around us in a way that's useful to us. And you need that to be able to for the computer to be able to understand where you are. So think about one of the big problems with virtual reality. When Palmer Luckey released his head-mounted display on Kickstarter back in 2012, it was this device, by the way. I've got headsets all over my floor now. This is the headset that he put on Kickstarter back in 2012. This is the Oculus Rift Dk1. And this is a 3DOF headset. What I mean by that is you could look around, right? But you couldn't move forward, backward, left, and right originally using this headset. Now, in order to get to 6 DOF or 6 degrees of freedom, you've got to add another 3 degrees of freedom. So you've got to be able to move forward, backward, left, right, up, and down. To be able to do that, the machine, the headset, needs to understand your position in the real world environment. Now, how do you do that? You do that using a technology which is related to computer vision that is called simultaneous localization and mapping. So in other words, the computer calculation of simultaneously working out where you are, mapping the environment, but at the same time working out where are you in that environment as it's being mapped. And if it knows that, then it can work out how to place you in the virtual world as you're moving in the physical world. So it's a way of helping you to emulate your movements from the physical world to the virtual world. Hopefully that helps, Roki. I will jump back to the presentation and then I'll come back to a few more questions in a bit. Let's go back to share screen here. And there we go. So when it comes to part of the study that we did, we looked at augmented reality and virtual reality as the split in this seeing is believing analysis. And what we found is that augmented reality is going to take the significant share of the market compared to virtual reality. Now, the automatic assumption is that we should all just invest in augmented reality, but don't adhere to that. Don't think about it like that. There is no war going on between augmented reality and virtual reality. There is very little cannibalization of the applications between the two different technologies. Best way to think about this is virtual reality is all about immersion, right? It's about immersing you in a completely different environment. Whereas augmented reality is about information. It's about giving you information that is useful and timely in the real world around you, right? And those two ideas don't intersect in a massive way. So they will always be a place for both virtual reality and augmented reality in terms of their different application areas, and they don't necessarily substitute each other in a large number of these cases. I talked a little bit about training previously, and I want to bring this to life a little bit more. So this is actually a part of a study that we ran in collaboration with Oculus, the company that produces this headset, and a company called Tailspin, a US company that deals with the creation of training scenarios in virtual reality. And we conducted this study here. You can see this is a module on inclusive leadership. And the idea is you're seeing the view through the headset here. I'm obviously not able to give you it in exactly the same form because I'm presenting it to you on a 2D screen. But the idea here is in this scenario, you are faced with a number of decisions relating to inclusive leadership. How do you for example, how do you resource this project with people? Is it the person that is tried and tested, has great experience with the client, is the safe bet, or do you bring on the person that is technically slightly riskier, but requires upskilling to help them progress throughout the organization? And that's just one of many scenarios that you go through in this application. And we conducted that as an experiment alongside the equivalent content in the classroom perspective and in an e-learning format. And what we found is that in this particular instance, virtual reality can actually be better, faster, and cheaper at scale than traditional training methods. So you can see here that we've had some interesting results, and there's a lot of methodology and a lot of working out to get to this point. And I'm kind of just presenting you with the end results with little context. But if you want the context, I'll give you a link here and you can go check it out if you'd like. This is the link, pwc.com/us/vlearning, and I will put it in the chat window if I can find it, and you can check that out. These were the end results of it. Obviously, very fascinating study in a very particular instance relating to virtual reality for inclusive leadership training, but certainly creates a lot of exciting potential for the future. And off the back of that, we are actually now in collaboration with the University of Bath on a 4-year program where we want to investigate the potential value of virtual reality when it comes to hard skills. So yeah, I've got an example here. So anything where you have to use your hands to perform an action in the real world. So here you're seeing two PwC staff members on the bottom left and right of the screen. On the top left and right, that is their views in virtual reality. And they're in this oil refinery. They're saying hi to each other. They're talking to each other. They are physically picking up the hard hat, putting it on. They're going out into the refinery. They're picking up a carbon monoxide monitor. They're doing their scans. They're, conversing over the, the walkie-talkie or whatever system they're using. And it's just an amazing way of simulating this environment, which would be very, very difficult to recreate or very expensive and potentially very dangerous. You can't allow a carbon monoxide leak on a real oil refinery for the sake of, training people on how to spot a leak. So virtual reality allows you to do that in a very inexpensive and scalable way. But yeah, the reason I mention it is I'm very excited to have this collaboration with the University of Bath, and we're going to see over the next few years not only virtual reality for job simulation training and get some academic papers produced about its value there, but also other areas like collaboration we spoke about previously. And this, speaking of collaboration, is a video from an application called Spatial. Now, Spatial specializes in collaboration via augmented reality and virtual reality. So their system works on both. What you're actually seeing right now in this video is a meeting with my colleagues in the XR team here in PwC UK. And it's actually the view through one of our developers' HoloLens 2s. So we're actually in their living room as holograms, so to speak. And the rest of us were wearing virtual reality headsets, so Oculus Quests. So for us, we were in a completely different environment. We were in a different house. But to him, he was in his living room and we were in his living room. But so purely socially distance allowed, very safe, no COVID transmission issues over the web there. Final big area I'll mention is remote assistance. So here you're seeing a HoloLens 2, and the idea is you have an engineer that is attempting to perform a maintenance procedure on a piece of machinery. She's calling in to base to a more senior engineer for backup to help understand what she's supposed to do next. And as a result, the senior engineer on the call is actually able to annotate the real world So first of all, she's bringing up, information in a point of view. She's moving it away. And then those arrows there have actually been written on in the real world by the engineer from their laptop back at base. The interesting thing is the field engineer, if they were to move left, right, if they were to take off the headset, put it back on again, those arrows would still be in the exact same location as they were placed, which is pretty amazing. It allows for you to conduct all these procedures in a more error-free way. And if you're reducing error, obviously that has great health and safety ramifications. It has efficiency ramifications for business. So pretty amazing stuff there. So there are a few examples of it being used, but what about thinking back to a more macro picture of who's actually using this right now? And what are the sort of aggregate results? To try and answer that question, we conducted a scan of 7.2 million UK and US businesses, and we didn't do it manually, obviously. So we used a natural language processing algorithm to scrape publicly available information on the internet. So websites, company annual reports, news posts, social media posts, and any other sources that were publicly available to check for terms around virtual reality, augmented reality, spatial computing, immersive technologies, all of this sort of stuff. And then filtering for those ones where we suspected, as the algorithm picked out as determining that this company is actually using the technology versus just talking about it. It wasn't 100% accurate. So at the end of the day, we did have to do a manual review of the shortlist that came out, but the shortlist was a few thousand versus 7.2 million, which is far more manageable. Every example that we shortlisted, we connected to an industry, a geography, a technology, and a use case. In other words, an application of the technology. So technology, we mean VR and AR. Geography, we looked at different regions in the UK, East Midlands, Northeast, Northwest, Yorkshire and the Humber, Wales, so on. And the US, we did it by state. From an industry perspective, we created our own taxonomy based on what we were seeing, and that's listed here. And then from an application perspective, we had a similar idea, and we listed that here. Again, you can actually explore this if you'd like, and I'll put the link in for you here. You can check it out. Again, there's no need to put in any information for this. You can simply have a browse around it. And this is called our XR and industry analysis. So summary of this is we found thousands of live applications of XR in industry. So examples of where it's being used right now. And the interesting thing is this is the worst case, the most pessimistic outlook of the technology, because this is simply what has been publicly announced. So any company that wasn't so forthcoming or forward or public about their use of augmented reality and virtual reality did not get included in this analysis. But despite that, we still found over 1,500 examples in the UK and 2,200 examples nearly in the US. And you can see the split here in terms of the different areas of usage. So consumer engagement is a big one in the UK, and in the US, learning and development, achieving nearly a quarter of all the applications. Bring this to life a little bit more, talk to you about some stuff that you may not know or you may not have experienced. This is an example from a completely different part of the world. So this is from a Chinese company called Poison. And Poison is a unicorn, an over $1 billion valued company that deals with the sale of sneakers, of trainers, of shoes. And this, on the left-hand side here, you are seeing a screenshot of the mobile application that allows you to browse through the shoes. And if you click a button, it then opens the camera right-hand side here and immediately tracks where your feet are and places the shoes that you're interested in onto your feet digitally, allowing you to effectively digitally try them on without ever having to step foot in a store, and without even needing you to go anywhere. You could do this anywhere, anytime. You just need a phone that is capable of augmented reality. The interesting thing about this is this leads to an increase in sales and an enhancement of e-commerce. So if you think about how we engage with products as consumers, we can go to a website listing and we can check it out. So here you've got a stand mixer for the kitchen, and that's great. I can click a few pictures and I can look at it from different predefined angles, and I can read some information about it. And I could go a little bit further and I could actually use a 3D model or a pseudo 3D model of the device and use my finger to swipe across it and rotate it and all sorts of stuff. Now, interestingly, studies have shown that if you conduct that with your finger, it actually increases this sense of ownership by about 19% over the website listing. And I'm going to be a little bit careful with my vocabulary here. In fact, I can show you. Let me see if I can do this. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek, actually, into a part of the book, because this was a bit of research that I did for Reality Check, which I found really interesting, and I think you might as well. Tell me if you can see. You should be able to see my screen if I open this up. So this is a little bit of an excerpt from Reality Check, and I'm literally just going to read you off this because this is how I best explained it. In a nutshell, the closer a consumer feels to a product, the greater their sense of ownership over it and the more they are willing to pay for it. This holds true even if the product is digital in nature. One study showed that when a 3D image of a product, which consumers could rotate with their mouse, was presented to them on a screen, it increased feelings of ownership by nearly 19% versus a 2D image of the product. Taking this a step further, another study examined augmented reality's sense of presence. So that is how realistic an item shown anchored in a user's environment through AR looked and felt compared to a 2D equivalent. So this was, if any of you did The Guitarist earlier and you put the guitarist in your real world environment, this is what I'm talking about here, except with a physical retail product that you can sell. And this study concluded that augmented reality in this fashion created 174% greater sense of presence compared with 2D images. And that is really, really interesting, and the basis for what I'm trying to summarize when I present this picture here. So website listing is great. We get some information, we get a picture of it, but it's not one-to-one scale, and it doesn't feel like I'm connected to the product. If I put it on if I'm allowed to be more tangible with the product, if I'm allowed to play with it, rotate it, move it about, I get a greater sense of its appearance, of the product itself, and that increases feelings of ownership over it. When I can put it in my actual kitchen on the counter at a one-to-one scale, then that's the golden standard right there. Or let's say it will be once more companies catch on to this, and you can obviously encourage a lot of sales off the back of that, because consumers then feel far more confident about making the purchase of the product because they know how it looks in their kitchen, they know how it will fit, they know how it will work with all the other things and gadgets and pots and pans that they've got in their kitchen space. And that will encourage them to ultimately press the button and make the purchase. And also reduce returns because of a misalignment between what they were expecting and what the reality was. And returns can be very costly for organizations as well. So there are massive benefits for both the consumer and the enterprise when it comes to using augmented reality for this purpose. A lot of good Q&A questions there. Let's have a look. Let's stop here and see what's going on in the Q&A panel. So we have got Mark asking, I like the shopping example. Presumably it will stop Gruen transfer as you'll see what you need rather than what you don't. Exactly, and I think that's kind of what I was just describing here. In fact, the idea that you're able to actually get a far more realistic sense of what you're placing in the real world. Then we've got an anonymous attendee asking, Google Glasses was good, but no longer there. Will those type of AR glasses still be coming out in the future? This is a good question. So Google Glass and that type of headset is very different from this type of headset that I showed you here, right? Sometimes the distinguishment is made in terms of the vocabulary used. So I promised I wouldn't use more terminology than XR, AR, and VR, but I kind of have to answer this question, and hopefully you'll get it. Mixed reality is sometimes used as a term to describe a higher form of augmented reality where the device, whether it's a head-mounted display or a mobile phone, is actually capable of implementing virtual objects anchored to the real world. So in other words, it understands the real world through that computer vision technology. Now, Google Glass is not a mixed reality headset by that definition, okay? Google Glass is what is described by some as an assisted reality headset, right? And this is a form of augmented reality, but a very simple one, where you are simply displaying some information in front of the user's view, and it doesn't necessarily need to be, connected to the real world in the sense that it needs to sit on a table or a floor or against a wall. It is just there in front of you, and it follows you no matter how you move, and it's just there for you to reference back and forth very quickly. You may think, well, that's pretty boring, and not interested in that. However, though that type of assisted reality as a concept actually allows for incredible efficiencies in manufacturing and other similar organizations, because what is the alternative? The alternative is you have, some printed documents that you need to hold in one hand and keep referring to and flip through pages and deal with markings on it and all that. You need to perhaps, in warehouse operations, you need to operate some of these scanners with one hand while you're trying to pick products from a shelf with the other hand. There are inefficiencies there, and they may be small inefficiencies, but when you multiply that by 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 workers, it becomes an incredible efficiency play for organizations, and well worth investing in a lot of cases in this assisted reality technology. So Google Glasses is not actually no longer here. The initial Google Glass that got released as an experiment to consumers was seen by Google as an experiment that didn't quite go the way they were hoping for, and they withdrew it from the market. However, they then released Google Glass version 2, which is going really strong right now and is being used by large companies in different parts of the world. So Google Glass has not disappeared. It has just been upgraded, and it has been moved from the consumer world to the enterprise world, and rightly so, to be honest. The idea of pushing Google Glass as an experiment on the public, I can understand why that may not have gone the way Google was hoping, with all the privacy arguments around it, with battery life concerns and things like that. But the interesting thing is, despite the privacy complaints, one of the reasons I think that Google Glass was withdrawn from the consumer market is actually it didn't gel from a fashionability perspective. Because if you look at a pair of glasses that were around at a similar time, the Snapchat spectacles, right? They were designed to capture video and pictures of people, but they didn't receive the same level of backlash as Google Glass did. And there may be a number of reasons for that, but one of the reasons I believe as to why that happened is because they looked like a normal pair of sunglasses versus the Google Glass, which was clearly created by the geek community, which I count myself proudly among them there. If you didn't notice from my shelves of head-mounted displays on the left and right of me, this point about fashionability is really important, because if we want this technology to be adopted in the mainstream and people to actually wear this stuff, it's very invasive, or it's very personal, let's say, to have something on your face like a pair of glasses. Therefore, if you're going to get consumers to do that, you need them to feel proud, comfortable about wearing that. And obviously, the more fashionable that hardware is, the better it will be. So hopefully that answers your question, anonymous attendee, and provides a few nuggets to the rest of the audience on assisted reality, mixed reality, and all these wonderful terms that are going on around there. I will return to the presentation very quickly, and I know we're running out of time. We've only got 20 minutes left. I didn't actually think we would keep going for this long, but people seem to be quite bought into it. A lot of people interested in the stuff that's going on. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually show you the rest of the slides, and I'm going to ask you what part you want to see for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll take it back to questions. So let me just
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Hi, Jeremy. This is Dalton here.
Hey, Dalton.
Please feel free to continue to upload past date if you can take it. Hey.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Dalton. I will let me share my screen now and see what everyone thinks. So back to the presentation. We have just gone through different use cases. So here we have a few more different use cases around augmented reality being used for underground infrastructure, virtual reality being used by Ford for ergonomics, augmented reality being used in the sports world, another virtual reality application of how you view sports together in virtual reality being used by the Red Cross, tourism, a little bit of a talk about how VR, contrary to what people might think, does not make everyone sick. Talking about 360 video as a valid form of virtual reality versus computer-generated stuff. And then a little bit of a dive into why this whole concept of virtual reality, the year of virtual reality, doesn't make much sense, and arguments and data-backed arguments as to why virtual reality is not mainstream yet. And then finally talking about the challenges to the mainstream adoption of VR. So there you have it, everyone. If you want to mention on the chat window what areas you'd like to see, I'd love to get your views, and then we can hone in on those areas. And I'm more than happy, to answer your questions afterwards, or if you want to catch up with me, on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'll try to make sure that we're able to connect there. So we've got some votes here for why it's not mainstream yet. We've got some interest in the Red Cross example, why it's not mainstream. This looks like a popular area. Use case to watch sports together. Yep, infrastructure with the pipes. Okay, that is really helpful. It looks like we might have a winner, actually, why it's not mainstream. And I'm actually quite keen on that one myself, I have to admit. So I'm glad we've got a lot of people choosing that. So why don't I start with that, and then I will go to questions. And if anyone has a specific question about, the Red Cross example or anything like that, I can try and answer that as well. But I'm happy to stay on, if people want to stay on as well till 8:15. Otherwise, I know everyone might have to go at 8 o'clock, or may be quite fed up of listening to me by then, and I totally respect that. Not a problem if you want to drop off at 8 o'clock. That's absolutely fine. So let us jump to why we think virtual reality is not mainstream. So this concept about the year of VR gets brought up every single year. And actually, am I sharing screen? Let me make sure I've got this here. No, I'm not. Good thing I realized that. Okay, back to it. This concept around the year of VR has been going on for quite a while now, and I've been collecting news articles throughout the years. I was disappointed actually to find that we are already in April and I haven't yet been able to add 2021 to this list of beautiful headlines advocating for the year of virtual reality going mainstream since 2014. But I mean, it does beg the question, virtual reality, this latest era of VR, you could say it started in 2012 when Palmer Luckey put his Oculus Rift prototype on Kickstarter. You could say it started in 2014 when Facebook bought Palmer's company Oculus for $3 billion. And then you had all of these technology behemoths following suit. Whatever your thoughts, the question is, why is it not mainstream yet? Firstly, to answer that question, we got to define what we mean by mainstream adoption. Now, the exact percentage doesn't really matter, but I've picked one that makes a lot of sense, that is talked about a lot. And if anyone wants to read more about this diffusion of innovations theory, it's a theory that goes back many decades, but was recently brought up in a book by Geoffrey Moore called Crossing the Chasm. And he used this point between early adopters and early majority. So in other words, the first 2.5% of people to adopt a technology are the innovators, the next 13.5% are the early adopters. Once you go from 16%, the sum of these two groups, to 17% onwards, the pragmatists, the conservatives, the skeptics, that's the point at which you cross the chasm from the early market to the mainstream market. So I said, okay, let's go with 17% then, but let's be consistent. Let's use that 17% mark and understand and analyze how long did it take? How many years did it take to reach 17% market penetration for these technologies that you see here? So the landline, the microwave, the radio, the internet, the computer, the tablet. So technologies old and new, some, over 100 years old, others, in the last few decades. Out of curiosity, let's take the landline. If you want to type in your chat window, how long in years do you think it took to go from, and this is from the first year of consumer sales, when it was in sold to a consumer, available in a marketplace, you could just go out and buy one or get one put in your house. From that point to 17% market penetration, how many years do you think it took? Let's see, we got 75, 50, 25, 90, 55, 30, 70, 50, 20. Okay, some good guesses here. And interestingly, 60, 40, I'll give you the answer right now. It's not actually as many as you might think. It took 29 years. So who said 30? Swapratim, 30 years. Yes, you were the closest there. Actually, Sam as well. Sam Watling at 25 years, second closest there. So the landline actually took 29 years to reach mainstream adoption by these definitions. And you can see how long it took other technologies. Interestingly, it wasn't the internet or the PC or the tablet or anything like that that took the least amount of time. It was radio. Radio took 6 years to reach mainstream adoption, which is pretty amazing. So now the question is, how long has it taken virtual reality? And I went back as far as I could to the earliest point in time that I could legitimately say that this was the point at which headsets appeared in stores at a reasonable price for consumers. And that was 1993, which brings us to 27 going on 28 years now. So pretty late in the game, but within the range of adoption of different technologies around the world, it is still within that range. And if you talk to analysts right now, the penetration of virtual reality headsets in the market is anywhere between 6 and 16%, which means that we are right on the cusp in a lot of instances in terms of going from that early market to the mainstream market. So very exciting place for virtual reality. And the reason why there is this perception of virtual reality taking so long is because we tend to take for granted how quickly stuff appears. I mean, the iPhone, came out in 2007. It's difficult to imagine worlds without smartphones now. But even that, it took a while to get there. The difficulties with virtual reality, however, is that it is a different game we're playing here, because VR, unlike the technologies that came before it, were very much it is very much a unique technology in that it disconnects you from the real world. And that's part of its benefits. It's meant to do that. That's where its power comes from. The ability to get you focused in a completely different environment. And as John says, friction is a major barrier as well. And in fact, it's a nice little segue. I know some people were asking about challenges. And actually, that is the next section, challenges to adoption of the technology. These challenges still remain. And friction, I would put under the bucket of the user experience. But if you think about the challenges, you can bucket them up, the main ones, into these 4 areas. User experience, in other words, how intuitive is it to use the technology? How easy is it for consumers to get access to it, to open it up, to set it up, to put it on, to do what they need to do in it? And there's still some work to be done there. Cost, pretty self-explanatory. Good thing is cost is coming down every day. And I mean, at £299 now, it's not terribly out of the price range of a lot of people. Content. Content refers to the availability, the breadth and quality of content that is available on these headsets. Mainly a challenge for the consumer market, because the enterprise market tends to create their own bespoke content. And then finally, education. Not a lot of people have experienced virtual reality. Not a lot of people understand the breadth of virtual reality, and we've covered a lot of it here. But thinking back to just an hour ago when we were talking about cave systems and smartphones and large screens and augmented reality and mixed reality and assisted reality, all the different applications, it's not simple. As I said, it's not a point technology, but the more people understand about the technology, the more they can ascribe value to it. And because it's a very visual front-end technology, it really needs to be experienced to be fully understood. So that obstacle will solve itself as time goes on. What I'll do now is I will switch mode to Q&A, and I will go to, let's see what we got here in the Q&A. We've got Swapratim asking, what is your view on the future evolution of augmented reality, from headsets to apps to web AR, how AR could be easily accessible with better comfort level from a user perspective? So, very good question. And I would say that the evolution of augmented reality is definitely starting in a massive way on the smartphone. And you could see from our earlier exercise how easy it is for users to access an augmented reality experience on their smartphone. And the fact that this technology is effectively becoming de facto in everyone's pockets is an amazing thing for the automatic adoption of augmented reality. For anyone wondering what web AR technology is, this is quite exciting from a friction perspective, from a user experience perspective. Web AR refers to activating an augmented reality experience via your web browser. So in other words, without actually having to download an app, a piece of software, and going through that whole rigmarole, just like you did earlier, scanning a QR code, clicking on a link, allow access to the camera, done. The experience downloads and activates in front of you. That is a far more frictionless experience than having to go find an app on an app store, download, install, go into the app, and all this sort of stuff. So smartphones and web AR, very, very excited about that, and very significant parts of AR's evolution, definitely. I would say the headset, the wearable aspects of augmented reality make a lot of sense, but that is a very, very difficult play for the consumer world. In enterprise, it makes a lot of sense, and it's relatively easy to implement. But the consumer world, getting people to put a piece of technology on their face, right in front of their, the main part of their face that everybody looks at, their eyes, that cultural barrier, I have to admit, I can't see that being superseded for a good few years. I think that's going to be very difficult. It makes sense as an evolution, and there's a lot of work being done by Facebook and Apple. And you imagine with those two behemoths pouring millions and billions of dollars into research around this, we may have a world where that is a possibility sooner than later. But again, there are so many challenges around it, not only cultural, but technological as well. And I think so it is going to be a natural evolution, but it's going to take time. And the evolution beyond that is going to be the contact lens. And there are a few prototypes being created now, some of which are available. They don't look particularly nice, but they have managed to get the electronics into a contact lens that can fit. I'm not sure how comfortably in the eye, but that's kind of the next evolution beyond that. So a lot of exciting stuff. Hopefully that answers your question, Swapratim. Abdur is asking, do you think mixed reality will be around in the next 10 to 20 years? And question 2, do you think here in the UK right now we have a good enough network or bandwidth that could handle AR technologies? So mixed reality will certainly be around in the next 10 to 20 years. If you think about it, it has value right now. So unless it's going to be superseded by something that we're not seeing, but if we're not seeing it right now, I think it would be, I'll tell you what might supersede it. It would be the neural implant technology that basically would forego the eyeball. So you get information through to your eye, your brain translates that information and says, this is what you're seeing in front of you, computer screen, walls, etc., etc. If you can bypass that, obviously, and just go straight to the brain and say, this is what's in front of you, then obviously then you have no need for a virtual reality equipment or mixed reality headsets. I would still argue it's technically a form of virtual reality, just a very advanced form, but that really is very, very futurist thinking, and the next evolution beyond the contact lens, let's say. Do you think, the second part of the question, the good enough network that could handle AR technologies? I feel like the question slightly alludes to 5G technology here. With 5G, yes, 5G is going to be pretty amazing, and it's going to create a lot of applications for virtual reality, or enable a lot of applications because of the high bandwidth and the low latency that it affords. However, if I think about any trip I have to make on a train in the UK, and the fact that I still can't get even a 3G signal at many segments of the trip, I am quite skeptical about the sort of takeover of 5G as this new thing that's going to change everything. I think it will be many years before 5G is reliable enough to be used in such a context. So in summary, yes, it has applications, but I don't think, I think it will be a good few years yet before we really see that become reliable enough to rely on. We're coming up to 8 o'clock now, so I promised I would mention this. Actually, I forgot to mention it, but if anyone is interested, I will share my screen very quickly and go back to this. A lot of this material that I've been talking to you about today comes from the book that I wrote, Reality Check. And Reality Check has all of these use cases in it, over 50 case studies in different industries, companies of all sizes. It talks about all these different misconceptions, the sickness aspects, the 360 video versus CG. It's not scalable, it's too expensive, all of that stuff, and deep dives into it. It's not technical at all. So even if you know nothing about virtual reality and augmented reality, you can pick this book up and read it easily. BCS has a discount code available, very kindly provided by the publisher. So if you want to get 20% off, just use the code BCS20, and that is directly from the publisher, Kogan Page. If you want more information about the book, I will put it in the chat window here, and you can check it out and see what you think. There's the chat window there. Let's see, hopefully that works for you. I'm not sure if it's clickable for some reason. Oh, there you go. So I'll stop sharing. I'll go back to the questions now. Anonymous attendee is asking, is there any research for how do those technologies impact on human health? For example, if you use it for a long time. It's a very good question. I have to admit, I think the long-term implications of using this technology have not been studied fully. to be honest with you. So short term, it's been tested in not only in organizations that manufacture the headsets themselves, but also in academia. But when I say short term, I'm talking about days, months, things like that. Interestingly, there is the only long-term study that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are more since I've looked at this now. But if you check with the University of Leeds, they are conducting a project called Born in Bradford, and that has a virtual reality component attached to it, and that's going to go on for many years. So that is a long-term study, not purely about virtual reality, but it will include virtual reality. That will be interesting to get in touch with there. If you have any difficulty with that, just get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I can make intros to the people involved in that project. So Bob is asking, in terms of healthcare applications, is there opportunities for remote actual surgery, or is that a leap too far technology-wise and ethically? So remote surgery has been conducted using this technology before. And in fact, the best person to chat to about that is a guy called Shafi Ahmed. And Shafi Ahmed is a British surgeon, and he's also part of a company called Medical Realities. Medical Realities was and is a pioneering company, but back in, I think it was 2016, they actually performed the first live stream of a surgery in virtual reality, live stream to students and viewers all over the world using Google Cardboard style headsets. So you could feel like you were in the operating theater. So it's not quite, performing the actual surgery you were talking about. But the reason I mention it is it's connected to Shafi, who would have been involved in a lot of this stuff. They did some amazing things, and they're still going and doing a lot of training in the virtual reality space if you want to check them out. John is saying also it was slow, and furthermore, I think it was an experiment to see if the market was ready. I think this is, you're probably referring to the Google Glass stuff, John, in which case, yeah, you're right. It was marketed as an experiment. Unfortunately, that's not how a lot of consumers took it. So when Google withdrew the experiment, as they were, rightly allowed to do, they had specified this up front. A lot of people were pretty annoyed by it because they had spent, $1,000 getting access to this prototype experiment kit. So yeah, it was an experiment, and as a result of that, it got moved from consumer to enterprise. Maureen, is there a place where I can bring a group of seniors to experience some of this technology, or attend a talk which explains how VR/AR could be used to help seniors? Very good question, Maureen. So I've actually, I've been posting a lot about virtual reality for seniors, interestingly, over the last week or so. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, let me see if I can get you, best way to do this actually is just go to my website, jeremydaltonxr.com. That has my, it has my Twitter, my LinkedIn, and access to the book, all the links you need basically. And you can connect with me there. But from memory, there is a chap called Charles King, and he runs a British startup called WizDish, and they have a product called the WizDish Rover, which they are actually using with seniors right now. It's an omnidirectional treadmill, and actually let me bring this to life for you a little bit. I'm going to share my screen again so you can understand what I'm talking about. An omnidirectional treadmill is as it sounds, it's a treadmill which allows you to move in all sorts of directions in a virtual reality headset usually. So this is the Rover website, and here we have a video. Let's make sure the sound's off. So using this little system here, very, very clever technology. You kind of, it's not the right terminology, but you shuffle. I guess you shuffle on the low friction platform using a special pair of shoes, and a microphone underneath the platform, the plastic of the platform there, picks up the noise from the shuffling of the shoes and translates that to movement in your virtual world. Really, really innovative and simple, low-cost solution for creating an omnidirectional treadmill. So we're only talking about, starting at £700, pretty amazing. And this is being used by this company, WizDish, with seniors to help them keep active, to help keep them stimulated, going to different environments around the world. So definitely check them out if you get a chance. Charles will have many more examples of virtual reality being used for in the senior space. Yeah, so that's probably worth connecting with him on that. But I can tell you more about it as well if you'd like over LinkedIn. So Roki is asking, that's a good point about strengthening the relationship between the consumer and the product. My question is, how far are we from creating a system that doesn't make people feel nauseous or sick after wearing the goggles? All right, so this is a very complicated concept. Let me try and summarize it very quickly. There is this feeling that everybody just gets sick instantly in virtual reality. It's not quite true. The truth is far more nuanced than that, and I cover this in an entire chapter in Reality Check, but this is kind of the summary of the situation. Motion sickness, which is very closely related to cyber sickness, has been around for time immemorial. You've had in fact, the word nausea comes from the ancient Greek nous, which means ship. The ancient Greeks, in their seafaring adventures would often feel this form of motion sickness. Admiral Nelson, famous British naval commander, for the entirety of his 30-year career on the seas, was seasick. And it doesn't matter whether you are sick on boats, seasick, sick on planes, airsick, sick in space sickness, sick in cars, car sickness, trains, all these modes of transportation. Motion sickness has been around for a while. Even in non-modes of transportation like film, some people still feel sick if the film is too juddery or flying all over the place. And in fact, there's quite a fun example here I prepped for you. If you want to check it out, where is it? Yeah, go to moviehurl.com. And this is basically a rating of the movies that are most likely to make you feel motion sick. And I'm not talking about a virtual reality movie. I'm talking about a movie on a screen, a normal 2D screen in front of you. So as you can see, the Blair Witch Project, probably with its shaky camera type moving, takes the cake. Number one, worst movies, Hall of Shame. There you go for motion sickness. But I think the point is here that this is not a concept that is specific to virtual reality. Virtual reality just happens to be one of the latest technologies which is suffering from what is effectively a bug in the human software. It is a feeling of sickness that the body gets when it is not getting an aligned signal between what you are seeing and what your inner ear is feeling. So for example, in virtual reality, if I stand still, but the scene in front of me is just throwing me all about the place. Example, virtual reality roller coasters, don't do it. Terrible idea. You're bound to make yourself sick. That is going to induce sickness. It doesn't matter how genetically, how predisposed or not predisposed you are to this type. If you push it hard enough, you're going to feel sick. In virtual reality, on a boat, on a plane, in a car, whatever the technology is. What is the cause of this cyber sickness? It's pretty complicated. I looked at a number of academic papers from NASA and from the US Department of Defense in writing that chapter on Reality Check. And this is kind of a summary of just the factors that could cause cyber sickness in individuals. So depending on individual factors, depending on the hardware itself, depending on the software and how it's being created, depending on the environment that you're in, these can all impact how sick you feel. And some people are more genetically predisposed to this type of sickness than others. If you look at the statistics, the US National Library of Medicine states that about 1 in 3 people are highly susceptible to motion sickness, but almost everyone will suffer from motion sickness if provoked with an experience that is intense enough. The good news is, though, if the experience is conducted and built in the right way with the best practices, if the hardware is good enough to run the experience in a way that doesn't cause a delay between when you move your head and when the experience moves with you, if you had, I can't remember actually if it was if you ate or didn't eat, but if you ate or didn't eat before the experience, and if this and this and this and that, then you should be in the best possible position for avoiding this type of cyber sickness. And you'll be happy to know, though, that the University of Cambridge they conduct experiments using VR and other technologies regularly. One of their studies involved more than 700 participants, and they had no cases of serious sickness. And I think the key word there is on serious, probably. But there are also other studies and examples out there. The Royal Shakespeare Company, they did a market research study, and this didn't have a large number of users, but it had a very long period of time, a 3-hour virtual reality theater performance, right? And out of all the people that went through it, nobody reported any issues and nobody took off the headset before the 3-hour mark. So it goes to show you that when it's implemented correctly in the right way, and there is respect or acknowledgement given to the different factors that you can control, then you can minimize at least the chances of serious sickness happening with virtual reality. Hopefully that summarizes the situation reasonably well. David Lewis is asking actual and potential applications for banking and finance. And I will only take a few more questions, even though we've got some really good ones here. And I really appreciate you all asking me these questions. So thanks a lot. David Lewis is asking actual and potential applications for banking and finance. Right. So interestingly, David, I thought banking and finance was actually the industry that would be the least interested in virtual reality. But I've spent most of my time talking to banking and financial services clients, and they tend to be interested in soft skills training, for example, when it comes to, it could be anything from diversity and inclusion to leadership training to what's the other stuff that we looked at? Commercial acumen training, negotiations training, all that stuff I was talking about. There is also an interest to explore data visualization. And if you think about this from the perspective of an investment banker, for example, Bloomberg's been looking at this for a few years now. The idea of having, obviously investment bankers have screens on screens all around them, and it's very difficult to transport that to another location. It's very difficult. It's expensive to set up. It's complicated to set up. You got to plug in your computer to all the screens, all this sort of stuff. In virtual reality, you've got real estate all around you. You can click a button and summon a screen. You can click another button and summon a screen. You can have 20 screens all around you. It's not going to cost you anything more. And so that's interesting from a data viz perspective. I haven't seen that being used in earnest, so I'd say it's still an early maturity type application, but certainly something to keep an eye out for the future. And next question, is there somewhere one can get a feel for the various applications? One place, I'm wondering. I can't think of one off the top of my head, which is probably part of the problem, to be honest. But Digital Catapult, based in North London, near King's Cross. They're not open to the public technically, but they do have a lot of events where they run publicly, and they do have a VR lab over there with access to a lot of different equipment and a lot of different applications. I'm sure they would be up for it at one of these events to give you a tour. No promises though, I can't speak for them. Other than that, very difficult one. I would say you're best off probably trying to rent a virtual reality headset, to be honest, and installing the applications yourself and trying it. There are a lot of different vendors now that will rent the headsets for you. So there's a company called Blue Hire, Virtual Umbrella. There's another one, I can't remember their name now. If it comes to me, I'll mention it, but that might be another way of getting around it. Isai, good to see you, Isai, is asking, could the popularity of the Quest be bad for virtual reality? I think the popularity of the Quest could, I generally think it's been a positive thing for VR in general. The only way I could see it as being bad for virtual reality is if the policies associated with it. For example, there are a lot of complaints about having to connect your Facebook account to your virtual reality headset, and nobody appreciates being forced to do that. If people get turned off it as a result and go for a lower fidelity experience off the back of that, and then assume that that is the be all end all of virtual reality, that could be quite dangerous in an indirect way. I suppose the only other way that it could be bad for virtual reality is if it just doesn't meet expectations. But the feedback that we've received to date has been really positive. And for people who have never tried virtual reality, it is certainly a very good introduction at a reasonable price level. So, final question I will take. We've spoken a bit about the cyber sickness side of things. We've spoken a bit about these areas. COVID accelerates the use of virtual reality for training, as can be done out of class and individually at the time of choosing the Netflix versus BBC point. Yep, a good point made there. And David brings up how significant could military applications of augmented reality be? I recently read that Microsoft have just won a contract to supply the US Army with 120,000 augmented reality headsets. Yeah, the US military is very, very, very bullish on augmented reality. And I have to admit, I don't have any deep connections with the Department of Defense, but thinking about the type of applications that they could implement, it's potentially a lot of it is about communication. So thinking back to the remote assistance application of the engineer that I showed you earlier in the presentation, but applying that to a military battlefield, for example, and being able to identify hands-free enemy locations without you having to explain it's 3 o'clock. It's behind the building. It's, the window 3 to the right, 2 down. That's where the sniper is. All this sort of stuff. If you can make that communication far more efficient, then that obviously has positive implications for the missions of the military and defense. And from a command and control perspective, perhaps also being able to see from the perspective of the individuals as well, and conduct command and control navigation, telling which group of soldiers to go where, and how to navigate around different environments. I think there could be interesting areas there to look at, which is probably to be honest, the iceberg of what the military sees as usage for virtual reality and augmented reality. They've been involved in VR and AR for decades now. Some of the earliest forms of simulation involved virtual reality, flight simulations, tank simulations that used really sort of early rudimentary headsets, some of which were like absolutely massive devices. But yeah, they've been using it for a long time now, and I don't think they'll be stopping anytime soon. I should probably call it there, otherwise I'll get into trouble with the organizers and at home here. But again, I'm more than happy to chat to you all. I do love the conversation, and I'm loving the questions that are coming through. So do connect with me. Head to jeremydaltonxr.com if you want to connect on Twitter or LinkedIn. If you want to check out the book, Reality Check XR. And thank you all for listening, and thank you for being so engaging and interested with your questions. Thank you to Dal and David and the BCS crew for making this happen. It's been a great chat, at least for me, let's say.
Jeremy, that was brilliant. It's interesting that you finished talking about conflict. I can imagine that we would come into conflict if we'd agreed to your half-hour session, which we talked about originally.
It was wishful thinking.
Yeah, this has been so interesting. I'm afraid there is a condition I'm going to impose on you. I want you back. I want you back. I want to see
I'm more than happy to come back. If people want to listen, yeah. I'm more than happy to talk.
This is really, really great. And you possibly saw a comment just a minute ago which was about how brilliant your session was. Now, what's the name of the person? Shami said, brilliant session, interesting, lovingly animated, and engaging.
Fantastic. I'm very, very happy about that. And really, I owe a lot of it to everyone in the audience. You know, you've all been fantastic, really interested and excited. And, you know, that's all a presenter could ask for, really.
Fantastic. Well done, Jeremy. Keep enjoying what you're doing. And we've really enjoyed hearing you do it.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dalton. Bye, everyone. See you next time.
Yeah. Bye as well, everyone. And look forward to seeing you at more webinars. And let's learn more from brilliant people like Jeremy. Although that's going to be a difficult act to follow. All the best. Bye-bye.